Olivia says, don't be too quick to judge. Now, let me talk about that for a minute. I wasn't there, and you weren't there, and we know now what happened. We know now what that perpetrator had done when they were walking down that hall to exit the house. We don't know what was normal for that house.
Yeah.
Right.
People coming and going, and 4 different people living there, and you open the door and there's somebody, and I'm not saying that someone else might have done something different, but I,
She deserves grace.
people have different responses when you don't know where they are.
Right.
I'm just saying I wouldn't be too quick to judge a young person in that situation when we know 4 murders have just been committed. She doesn't know that. She just knows there's somebody going by in the hall out there, and sometimes you maybe mind your own business. I don't know what the norm is for that house. Now, I want to introduce someone else to this conversation. Reporter Bryan Entin from NewsNation is in Idaho, where he has been covering this story from day one. Now, Bryan, welcome. You've interviewed all of Kaylee's family. If you can, share with us what their overall feelings in regard to this particular suspect and how they're doing, understanding that the norm would not be very well. I understand that, of course.
Yeah, they say, Dr. Phil, that they felt a sense of joy and relief when the arrest was made, obviously, because they've been living on edge, worried with this person still out there. So initially felt relief, but now feel this feeling of just being overwhelmed. I mean, I was in the courtroom here in Moscow, Idaho. It's a small courtroom. The family was there when Bryan Kohberger was brought in. They were sitting just about 5 to 7 feet away from Kohberger. So they just felt so overwhelmed by being that close to the man accused of killing Kaylee. And just sort of this feeling that now they've got to go through the whole court process. They say they want to be at every single hearing, and just knowing how difficult that's going to be moving forward. But you're talking about the surviving roommate. They are standing by her right now. You heard Kaylee's sister Olivia say it, Dr. Phil. They don't want people to judge that roommate right now, saying that no one was in her shoes, and no one knows exactly how they would have reacted in that situation.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And if they believe this is the right person, they have to envision this monster of a perpetrator being on top of their beautiful, innocent, sweet daughter with a horrific weapon in their hand, stabbing her to death, and then sitting 5 feet away from that person. How did they do that? How did they look at this individual?
I mean, they're an incredibly strong family. I can say that. I've been talking to them since the beginning of all of this because we've been on the ground here in Idaho. And I think this is probably the most challenging part. I mean, Kaylee's mom, Christy, was visibly emotional during the whole thing. I think one thing that they're having a really hard time with is when you go through that affidavit, and you mentioned it, all the cell phone pings and the timestamps and the 12 times police say that Kohberger was outside this house behind me before the murders. The family is going back and looking at text messages and phone calls that they had with Kaylee, talking about baking recipes. And they were on the phone with her during some of those times when Kohberger is accused of stalking the house. And that's been really, really hard for them, matching up those happy times with Kaylee with knowing that, according to police, Kohberger may have been right outside.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.